Good evening and welcome to BC Cattlemen's Association's Public Affairs and Education Committee's Coffee Shop Talks. This is our first webinar on mental health. And before we jump into the topic today, I'd like to introduce the Cattlemen's Association, our speakers, our funders, and cover some housekeeping items. The BC Cattlemen's Association has been around since 1929. For over 90 years, the association has been representing the interests of beef producers across BC. As one of the association's committees, the Public Affairs and Education Committee has created a 6-part webinar series airing from January to June of 2019. They're covering 6 different topics, including mental health, succession planning, employee management, employee retention, mentorship, and financial management. You can find information about the webinars on our website at www.cattlemen.bc.ca/coffeeshoptalks.htm or by calling the office toll-free at 1-877-688-2333. This webinar series was funded in part by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and the Government of BC, delivered through programs by Investment Agriculture Foundation and the BC Cattlemen's Association. Before the discussion on mental health begins, I'd like to introduce myself and cover some housekeeping topics. I'm Bree Patterson of the BC Cattlemen's Association, their beef production specialist, and staff support for the Public Affairs and Education Committee. All viewers are set to listen-only mode to help make sure this goes smoothly, and all questions will be allocated to the end, about the last 10 minutes. You can shoot those questions to the participant named Bree, and they will be read out loud without your name for privacy to our speakers. This webinar is also being recorded for future use, so that you can refer to it in the future. And now, let's turn it over to our speakers. We've got Reg Stewart with AgSafe and Robin Collins with Collins Counseling.
Hi, Bree.
Hi, guys. So I'm Robin Collins. Like Bree said, I'm a counselor. I do in-office counseling as well as equine-assisted counseling and nature-based counseling, so going for walks and hikes with clients and using horses in the counseling session. So that's a little bit about what I do.
That's awesome. And
I'm Reg Stewart. I'm the Provincial Ranch Safety Consultant for AgSafe, formerly Farsha, and I also work as the Superintendent of Field Operations, so supervising the various people we have in the regions and looking after the health and safety concerns, the wellness concerns of farmers and ranchers in the province of British Columbia. And I've been doing that for almost 20 years.
That's awesome. So as you guys can see, both of them have a lot of great information and background and knowledge on the mental health aspect of being farmers and ranchers. So now they've introduced ourselves and we're ready to talk about some different questions. Our Public Affairs and Education Committee has curated a whole bunch of awesome topics and questions to discuss. So the first one are, what are some different strategies to cope with everyday stressors and or seasonal stressors?
Well, I think that Robin and I come from complementary but different positions. The role that I feel, and leaning back on a background in ministry and 20 years of policing before that, more that boots on the ground kind of approach where one tries to just be in relationship with the farmers and ranchers, understanding and helping them, and being there to support them in a variety of different ways. And there are times when we see that there are different stressors. Some of them are good. I mean, some stress is good, and there's a reality to the fact that we live and breathe in a world that has risks and has stresses. And the challenge is really in managing those and identifying when the stress is not normal, I think. And would that be true, Robin?
Yeah, definitely. Stress is an everyday thing. There is good stress. It helps keep us alive and keep us alert and challenging ourselves. And then there's the bad stress. It's the stress that never goes away, that begins to wear us down. And I think you mentioned something when you were just speaking about relationships. And our community is really based on relationships that we have with each other. And that is one of the biggest ways that we can combat stress, is having healthy, positive relationships that we maintain daily.
Yeah, I think that just understanding the balance point between healthy stress and stress that kind of takes over and invades and pervades our thinking our actions, and from the safety perspective for workers and employers in the province, it's a factor in pretty much every major incident. There's some level of stress that's been induced, and whether that's just through stress that causes us to be in a hurry to do things and make mistakes. So stress is a very real part of our world. Identifying it and knowing when this is not normal, this is not enough. Managing those things you can manage and realizing when to let go of the things that you can't is probably a really big factor when you ask the question about what kind of stressors or seasonal stressors do we face in the industry. I think it is a reality that there are stresses. Calving comes with certain stresses. All of the functions that are performed in the ranching world come with certain stresses, and there's certain things that you can do something about. The ones that tend to really wear us down are the ones that ultimately, if we analyze them, are things that we can't really do anything about. Robin, any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Being conscious of what it is we can influence and what we can't. Like you said, the stressors that we can't control, that we can't influence, we have to figure out how to let that go. Figure out what part of that we can influence, or what it is about ourselves that makes us think about all of those things that we can't control. And sometimes we can't recognize that in ourselves. Sometimes we need to rely on our family or our friends to go and listen to them when they're saying, you got to take a breath, you need a break, like take the night off.
It is important to truly listen to people who care about you and to realize that they're actually about you and for you, and they're cheering for you and assuming the best when that person makes some sort of an approach. And it's often a very challenging thing to go forward to someone and say, I think that you need to talk to someone. I think that you need to take a break. I think any of those things that reflect upon it, because the whole stigma that's attached to a lot of mental wellness is a real challenge. And I think that we need to step away from that. Recently, WorkSafe BC identified that the majority of our claims and things going forward tend to be less traumatic, and they tend to be more of those sort of soft issues, as they refer to them, and they're not the traumatic kind of collision incident. They're more that soft thing. They're the skin cancers. They are including things like mental wellness. And I think that whole ability to manage that is increasingly going to be a challenge for us. There's so many things being thrown at producers now. Everything administrative that basically our dads didn't have to worry about. They worried about getting the calves calved and all that sort of thing. But you come in the house and there's just a stack of paper and you're going to file this and apply for that and do this. And those things are outside of a lot of the skill sets of people in the ranching world. And so I think that they contribute to the stress and being able to manage that. So Robin, you probably have some suggestions on how people who are inclined to one sort of performance and have a certain skill set, how do they balance some of the stress that comes from the things that they're asked to do that are just outside of their comfort zone?
Well, we are all asked to do things that are outside our comfort zone. And you can look at that in one of two ways. Either you can see it as a negative or you can see it as a positive. And if you want to see it as a positive, then you have to be open-minded and know that this is going to challenge me. It's going to be hard. I'm not going to get it right the first time. And I'm going to have to ask somebody who does have the knowledge. And so being open-minded and setting yourself a schedule and really going, okay, I'm going to focus on this for this amount of time and I'm going to put my energy towards it. And then I'm going to take a break. When I start to feel myself getting anxious, getting agitated, getting angry, and I'm going to take a break, go grab a cup of tea or coffee and go do something that I do like doing, that I do feel competent in, and then I'll come back around to this.
It's wisely been said that we have to accept the things that we can't change. And I think that in the industry, there are a lot of areas that are going into more technologically based solutions. Range plans are all going to be online. There's all kinds of things that are coming at us, and you really can't fight that. I think it is a stressor to all of us who try to challenge some of those things, but really we need to embrace some of those changes because they're not going to go away. And they need to be something that we become more and more comfortable with. And I think it's really key to have that ability to reach out, find the thing that's causing you stress. And if you can label that, I think, Robin, that you've really done a good job. If you can label it and go, I'm really stressed over all of the paperwork. And then you can reach out and engage someone to help you with that. I think that's pretty helpful stuff.
Yeah, and I might actually go even a little bit deeper than that. Yes, it is the paperwork that stresses me out, but what is it about the paperwork? Because it's easy to just fill in A, B, C, tick the boxes, but
well,
really,
maybe for you.
but then really going deeper into it, going, okay, what is it about the paperwork that causes me stress? Is it because I have difficulty reading? Is it because this is a new concept to me and I'm struggling to grasp it? Is it that I haven't seen this paperwork before? Is it brand new to me?
And the solution then again is to be free to reach out.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we really want to be so independent, and we fool ourselves into thinking that we're independent as people who ranch or cowboy in a world where we feel pretty independent at times, but we are very interconnected. And when we struggle with that, then we probably miss out on a lot of opportunities to grow personally, and that brings stress our way.
Yeah, definitely. Like the ranching and farming community, it really is a community. It is our friends, our family, and we are more than happy to go and help somebody who is in trouble, who needs that help. But it's offering help for problems that aren't visible, or asking for help with problems that maybe nobody else knows about, because it is paperwork, or it is something that isn't outside, that isn't thought about.
It's really good points, and I think that naturally leads into one of the questions we curated, which was, what are some signs and symptoms of depression or anxiety that might be easy to spot, so then maybe a family member can not so much intervene, but notice and go, oh, my loved one is feeling or acting like this, and that's kind of a sign, so maybe I need to be that support and be that community for them. So what are some signs and symptoms, if there is any kind of textbook or 3 or 4 key ones out there?
Well, like Reg said earlier, stress there is actually good stress out there, and it's something that's every day. It's when the stress doesn't go away that you continue to worry about something that is no longer in your control, or is so far in the future that it's not relevant right now, or you think about something that you did wrong in the past, and now all those feelings are lingering, and now it becomes chronic stress, and it leads to anxiety or depression. And when you see yourself having the same thought or worrying about the same thing over and over and over again, that's the first sign. It's when there's a change in your behavior, a change in your thought pattern. And maybe you aren't able to see it yourself because you're so close to the issue that you can't see the bigger picture. So that's when you rely on friends and family. And yeah, it is really hard to be that person to go up to somebody and go, you know what, Reg, I think you need to take a break.
I'll take a break. I'll take a break.
Okay,
Take a break.
I think it is time for you to take a break. I'm seeing these changes in you, and that's not normally who you are. And it's really hard to be the one to take that initiative and make that approach. It's also really hard to be the one to receive advice like that. It's hard to be the listener.
I think those are really valid points, and it comes back to that earlier concept of relationship, earning the right to have that conversation, and that's often time in, and not just timing, but time in with that person, and timing is important too. I mean, to challenge someone when they're in the middle of something that's very difficult might not be the right time, and the response is going to be different than if it's in a determined setting and when one takes the time to sit down and express concern and love. Because at the end of the day, that's really what you're doing. So when you're looking at something and you're seeing signs of something in a person that you care about and you want to help them, you would mention it if you saw a gaping wound on the back of their arm. And so it's the same kind of thing, but it's just so much more stigmatized. And I think that we really need to move past that, be able to hear each other, and to know that the people who care about you are simply expressing their concern and their care for you. And hearing that is a really important thing. So I think you identified some key indicators of that very significant stress. And for those of us who are sort of field level, I think that it's really important that we know when we can see a simple thing that looks a little bit out of place, and maybe there's a great time to make that known to the person, but knowing when you realize that I'm in over my head to have this conversation with someone, and that's why there's professionals like Robin who are out there, and it's our job to feed into those things and not try to replace that, but to realize that that is the same thing as any medical wellness caring person is in place to help us with.
Yeah, definitely. And it does come back to relationships. Like when there's somebody that you care about who is struggling, the best people to help support them and get past them are their friends and family. A counselor or any other professional, our job is to work ourselves out of business, is to figure out the stressors, figure out what the problem is, develop some mechanisms and some coping skills, and generally work on everybody's well-being, and then reconnect with the community, with the friends and the family, and then they don't need us anymore.
Yeah.
We're supposed to help people get back into the community.
I think picking that up from an agricultural safety perspective, one of the things that is really important for employers and for employees and for us as individuals is to recognize this whole concept of impairment. And it's come to the news lately through the legalization of cannabis and that sort of thing, but it's part of a bigger picture, and the bigger picture is fit for work, fit for duty. And there may be stressors in your life that are not related to that kind of impairment, but being alive to the reality that maybe you shouldn't be at work that day because there's so much going on at home, or there's some things you need to deal with. That whole being fit for work includes that whole concept of stress, and how do I manage it, and how do I work with that? And being free to talk to a workmate or an employer that you know they are concerned about your well-being, that's really important. So as an employer, we need to demonstrate that all along, build a relationship where an employee would come to you and say, I just can't do this today, and here's why. And have those, again, relationships are so important in freeing people up to have conversations about that inner part of them that they really are struggling, or they're struggling with the fact that they're struggling. That can even be a factor in stress.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier soft issues, the idea of soft issues. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about, is being able to recognize when things outside of work are affecting work. They are taking your energy, taking your mind off of the task at hand, and that is when people get hurt.
Yes.
And recognizing that when you go home, how do I leave those stressors from work at work? How do I take them off at the front door like I do my jacket and my boots, and leave them there for the evening so that I can be with my family, so that I can spend some quality times with my kids, my wife, my husband, whoever it is, my dog. And then being rested and recovered for the next day when you put your jacket back on and you pick up those problems once again.
Talking about that, do you have any resources that people could tap into so that they can go home and actually get that proper recharge, so that when they're back at the office or back in the tractor the next day, they're focused on the task at hand and not about the fight they had with their sibling, or how the cow prices are not going as well as they wanted them to, and how are they going to pay the bank man? What are some resources? It could be podcasts, books, obviously seeking someone of professional counsel maybe as well.
Yeah, well, I think that we live in a world where we're bombarded with information. There's so much available to us out there if we would just go and look. And so there are resources that are out there, and one of the things that AgSafe provides is a rural stress workshop. And what I love about the rural stress workshop is the ability for people to self-identify their stress. It really comes so nicely from us if we look at something and go, I'm really stressing out about things I have no control over. I need to look at that. And so the rural stress workshop, which is a free workshop provided to communities or associations, and when I do that workshop, it creates a toolbox, and you look through it and you do your own personal inventory. And so you yourself come up with a position that says, you know what, I'm worried too much about this or that, and then provides resources at the end of that. And there are some great agricultural specific resources across the country now. Saskatchewan has developed an excellent system of either web connection or call in if you want to talk to someone with ag specific kinds of circumstances. But we get a little bit off when we do that sometimes too, I think, in the ag. No one can understand me, I'm a rancher. But the reality is that clinical people understand people from a variety of things, because as Robin pointed out earlier, it's the underlying thing. I may have a lot of stress from this paperwork as a rancher, but whatever those things are that are pushing me to the edge of that feeling, they're common to all kinds of other industries and all kinds of other people. So I don't think that we have to look for a specific ag-related help, and there are a lot of helps out there when we're under stress.
That's a good point. Do you have anything more to add, Robin, on that?
Yeah. As a counselor, it's my job to work with people where they are. And there's a lot of people who come to me that I don't know anything about their work or about their personal life. Like that's something that I haven't experienced myself. But that doesn't mean that I'm not able to help. It's all about helping person in front of me dig a little bit deeper and go, oh, hey, I noticed this pattern in another area of your life as well. And sometimes that's all that it takes, is going, oh, I didn't even recognize that.
I think the biggest problem that we have as people in industry is the ability to hear that and to actually listen and to assume that that person just wants the best for you, because we tend to get defensive right off the bat, and we don't want to be a person who identifies with a wellness issue in the area of mental health in particular. And so if we can surrender that position and assume that this person simply is looking out for my best interest, and if that helps me be a better person, better worker, better employer, more of a person who's able to contribute to the community of impact that is uniquely mine, that's a pretty special thing. And for that person to care enough about you to come forward and have that conversation in a gentle and controlled manner, that's really it should go a long way with us. Unfortunately, at times that's when we get our backs up, and it's the last time we got to get our backs up. We got to hear what's being said by people who care about us.
Yeah, it takes a lot of strength to open yourself up and look into yourself and go, why is it I'm struggling? Why do I feel defensive? And usually when you start to feel yourself get defensive, that's when you know there's an issue. There's something that I need to work on. So, yeah.
So very good points, and kind of talking about needing to work on an issue when you're getting defensive. Lots of people will try maybe a counselor or some sort of mental health help. Maybe they've read a book and they feel okay about it, or they don't feel like they've gone a little deeper. Like, is there a point where people need to actually try other avenues as well, and not just like put their hands up and go, oh, I tried it and it didn't work, so I'm, this is not helping? Like, besides having good support from your community, what else can you do? If the book didn't help or the first counselor didn't help, is it normal to go find multiple different counselors later, or is it normal to try different things as well?
I think you got to just keep working until what feels like that big old weight on your back goes away. And Robin, you probably have a more technical term than big old weight on your back, but that really is part of what it's going to feel like, is that sense that, oh, okay, I can do that. And for different people, there's different get-off points. Someone may actually be able to read a book, identify with that, self-identify and diagnose and go, oh, that's me. I need to stop work at X number of hours, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. So I think there's a reality to the fact that there's a lot of different venues and opportunities out there. I guess the key would be do something. Like, my dad used to have a saying, when in doubt, don't. And that applied to a lot of things, and it saved my life a lot of different times, I think. But in this particular circumstance, I think it's when in doubt, do.
Yeah.
And do something. Like, take a look. Find, if you read that book and you go, oh, this just unearthed to me the reality that I should go talk to somebody. And that's when you hit the yellow pages. Do we still use yellow pages? Anyway,
Google. That's okay. We know what they are.
We know what the yellow pages are. You've read about them, seen them at the museum. But,
Yeah.
but that's sort of a concept where you go, okay, this is just uncovered for me, but I need to take another layer off here. So.
Yeah, and it's like when you go to a clinic or to some other lecture, there might be one thing that you get out of the entire weekend. And if that's all you get, then that's more than what you had before. And it might be that one little piece that you were missing. I've got loads of resources that I work with clients, but really it's about knowing what works for you, figuring that out, figuring out the steps that you need to take. I mean, there are a lot of counselors out there, and there are people that I work well with, and there are people that I just don't. Like, it's like friends. There are people that you know right away after meeting them that you're going to be great friends, and other people that you go, yeah, we're going to be acquaintances and we'll talk about the weather and be friendly, but that's about as far as we'll go. And that's okay. So that's when you go, okay, this isn't working. Let's go find somebody else. And you know what? When I get a client like that, I will help you find somebody else, because it's about you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's so important to just keep peeling back the layers until you've found the comfort zone that says, I don't wake up every morning worrying about that stack of papers or whatever it is that's just the trigger point, but there's something going on in there. So so those are some really good suggestions. And the reality that what helps one person just might not help someone else, and being unique in that and able to understand that that's okay. I think that we just need to be people who are determined to find the outlet, find what that is that eradicates that from your life, because we've only got a certain number of days on this old terrestrial globe, and we just want to make sure that each one of them is spent building a legacy where people recall you with favor. That to me is so important, and you're not going to do that if you're that grumpy old guy who's got stuff that you just didn't deal with.
Yeah, and I think you made a point that I would like to reiterate. There's something to remember when you're the person that's noticing something is off with a friend or a family, is that maybe something that does work for you isn't going to work for them. So you have to learn how to be okay with the person saying, you know what, I don't like that idea. That's not going to work for me, or that didn't work for me. It's okay.
And then sometimes that's hard to hear, because you're just trying to be that loving support in that community and going, hey, why don't you try this? And they're like, nope, didn't work for me. So yeah, being able to be a good listener on both sides, I guess, is probably pretty important, right? Yeah. Those are some really awesome points and really great discussion. So I'll turn it over to the listeners now. If you have any questions, remember to shoot them over to Bree. Your name will be read out loud for privacy. And while we wait for any questions to come in, do you guys have any closing comments or final points you'd like to make sure the viewers heard?
Well, I'd like to jump back to just resources. There is a podcast that I really like. It's called Finding Brave. It's hosted by Kathy Caprino. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I get the names right. Hosted by Kathy Caprino, and one of her guests is by the name of Cheryl Hunter. Her story is just heart-wrenching about what she's gone through, but she's been able to turn that around and make some positive changes in her life and help other people in a positive way because of what happened to her. And so she's got this resiliency, which is basically, how do I keep going after getting knocked down? Which is what we do in the ranching and farming communities. So when something happens and it's really bad, she says the first step is to own it, to go, okay, this happened, it did happen. And so now what did I learn from it? And how am I going to incorporate that into my own personal growth? And then from there, she says, how not to get knocked down so easily is the next step. And that's really making a list of 25 things that you like, that you feel refills your cup. And make a list of 25 things. Maybe it's making a cup of tea, or going down your kid's slide, or watching an old TV show.
Do they have to be different, or can I put my wife's name 25 times?
25 times. I would say 25 different things. And making this list is really hard. It's so hard to come up with 25 different things. I've got 10 on my list, and I'm still down 15, and I can't figure out what else to put on there. But it can be really little things. And you do one thing every day, and just doing that one thing helps you to refill your cup, so that when those really big stressful times come around, you're already working at full capacity. And so if you're only working at 50% capacity, you're really going to struggle by the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, and I was serious about the 25 things being my wife 25 times, but I think that really, if I was to leave a thought, it would be, don't isolate. Like, it's so important that we don't assume that macho position of, I got this all dialed in, if I don't, I should. If you need to talk to someone, find someone to talk to. Find that workmate, find a friend, find a relative, talk to your spouse. There are so many outlets for you there, and I think the biggest thing we can struggle with is isolation. And I know from the AgSafe guys that I have scattered around the province, they've built years of relationship with workers out there. And, mentioning to them that you'd like to talk to someone is the start to putting you in touch with the right resources. We don't have all the answers, and I'm not suggesting that we're counselors by any stretch of the imagination. My biggest contribution is knowing when I'm in over my head and calling Robin. And so I think, though, that just the ability to go, I need to reach out, to not isolate. And if we can do that, we can find the answers. Isolation just folds in on itself, and that's a really bad case.
I guess one of the key takeaways seems to be building community and not isolating yourself, and realizing that you're not alone, that there's people there to support you in other ways. And there might be people there who felt similarly to you that you can reach out to, and they can help you offer a good book, a good counselor, a good podcast to refer to. So I think those are really awesome points, guys. So thank you so much.
Knowing that you're not alone. There is somebody else out there who's gone through the exact same thing that you have. You're not alone. You're not indispensable. You're not,
Yeah, there's being alone, there's being lonely. And being lonely is not a good place to be, and being alone is where many of us actually like to be. Right?
Yes.
So that's good. But you can be there in your happy place, and that's important. So I think it's so important that we reach out, and whether that's to somebody that you know and trust, somebody that you come to a work relationship with, or a family member. Just don't lock it away and say it's just suck it up, buttercup, and move on. You do need to fix that stuff.
Yeah. So I guess one of the key takeaways is don't rub dirt on it. Find someone to help you with.
That's good. Did your mom say that?
No, but I just did.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for you.
But yes, so thank you, viewers, for attending, and thank you, Robin and Reg, for such great pieces of advice. Just a quick reminder: this will be recorded and posted on our website, www.cattlemen.bc.ca/coffeeshoptalks.htm, as well as the survey for the follow-up survey. So if you'd like to fill that out, we'd love that. Found again in the same spot on the website, or by calling 1-877-688-2333. Again, I'd like to thank our funders. So that is Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and the Government of BC, through programs delivered by Investment Agriculture Foundation of British Columbia and the BC Cattlemen's Association. So thank you guys so much for attending. Thanks for attending our very first webinar, and stay tuned for the next 5 webinars of the Coffee Shop Talks. Until then, bye.